All right, we are just about to get underway here, and I'll tell you what, we are finally back on. Russell,
Hey,
thank you so
Brian.
much for joining me here. The joys of technical difficulties. Thank you for everybody bearing with us here. Brian Callanan here with you, Russell Myers as well, as we dive into another episode of Inside the Audio Booth. And it's a fun time to be with you, Russ. I wanted to talk about the book, of course, which has been I had a great time reading this. I also wanted to talk about you and your background. But first, how you doing, my man? You've had so much work going on over the past couple of months.
I'm doing great. The technical difficulties. I had to download Firefox in the last, 10
10
minutes.
seconds? that was like Mission Impossible, man. I don't know how you got through
I'm
that.
glad
That
we
was
got
well
it
done.
done. Yeah, I'm on the Mac thing going,
And
so
loving it. And
yeah.
loving it. Well, let's talk a little bit about your books. I see in back you've got two of them, both stacked on top of each other.
Yeah,
Whitefish
yeah,
is
yeah.
book number one in the series. You got it. And then right above that is Miss the Target, which is the book I was talking about today with you here. Can you talk about this series, because it's been a great series for me to read? We're talking about the Brad Kelso PFT series. That's Pathfinder Tracker, and this is some interesting stuff. Tell us about this. How'd you come onto this idea?
Well, I originally got the idea from a friend of mine named Brad, who he'd worked in Alaska, actually on Kodiak too, and he'd done a
Okay.
lot of traveling around Alaska. And he told me stories. He'd tell me stories about Alaska and stuff like that. And he has nothing to do with the story of Brad Kelso, but
At least as far as we know. Okay.
yeah, but exactly. But that's how I got the idea. And I've always wanted to write, and I've written for my whole life. And I thought, well, this would be an interesting to make a mystery and maybe treat him like a government agent,
Yeah.
traveling all
Right.
around and trying to find people.
Yeah. Let's unwrap the mystery a little bit if we could, Russ, and talk about that. Who is this character? I know he finds people who can't be found, as you write it in the opening there. But
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit. What is this? What is this about? What is Brad Kelso all about? What is
Well,
this character?
I always thought when I see shows on Netflix or whatever, you see shows that always have an assassin or something like that. But
Yeah.
I thought, it wouldn't just be an assassin. You'd have to have someone to track these people down first, because an assassin would be a specialized trade. So I thought, well, it'd be fun to have a story about the guy that actually does that.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that tracks people down, so the assassin can come in later. And that's where the idea kind of came from for a PFT. And I just kind of made it up, PFT, but it sounds plausible.
Yeah, no, so much of this book sounds so plausible. I hope you take that in the best way there, Russ. But I did want to talk to you about a few of these different things, and I'm hoping as we get more people joining in on the live stream, or if you're watching this recording, make sure you throw some comments at us. We definitely want to answer some of your questions. I think what was very interesting when we were posting about this event a couple of days ago, this live stream that we're in the middle of right now, there was one writer out there, one person who had a question. Robin was asking about why a trilogy here. I thought this was a really interesting thought, because this is definitely three books at once that you're trying to juggle and put together here. So first time writer, you were like, wait, I want to have three times the fun, or what was the idea behind a trilogy here?
Well, the trilogy came to me about halfway through the first book. I
Okay.
was just writing this book, and I had this story, and then I thought, this is I see the scenes in my mind, and it's almost like a show.
Okay.
So I thought, it'd be interesting, either a screenplay or something like that. So I thought, I need to develop this a little bit more. So the idea of the trilogy came, and if you read the second book, I don't want to spoil it,
Right.
but if you read the second book, you can kind of see where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, I'd like to do a trilogy, and I think three is good for the big picture.
Yeah.
And who knows after that? But
Okay. Okay.
I think
Well, you
Brad's
did.
going to make it, but
Yeah,
not
well,
certain.
gotta keep them guessing here. That's for sure. And
Yeah,
I did want to make sure that I answered this question, because Mike just sent this in via Facebook. Mike, thank you for tuning in and asking this. What's a PFT? I know I said Pathfinder Tracker, but can you go into a little more detail about that? Mike wanted to know, and let's get it from the horse's mouth. What's a
yeah.
PFT, Russ?
He's a Pathfinder tracker. He's basically a tracker,
Okay.
but Pathfinder sounded pretty cool too. So I thought, well, I need some kind of acronym. So I thought PFT, Pathfinder Tracker, sounds. And in the books, I say, well, it's maybe redundant, but the government is full of redundancies.
Yes.
And so this is kind of what they do. They say Pathfinder Tracker, and it's a specialized thing. It goes out, and these guys or women have to look for whoever they're chasing.
Right.
And sometimes these people aren't easy to find. So
Right.
they need a specialized person that goes out and asks all the tough questions when he needs to, and locates these people. And sometimes they get lucky.
Right, right. And it's kind of a quasi-governmental agency almost. I mean, you refer to it as the agency throughout, which I
Right.
think is great. And so it's kind of working as I saw it miss the target here, which we'll get into a little bit more in just a minute. But I saw this agent working with the FBI a little bit. And there's Homeland Security over here and things of that nature. You were really trying to kind of build this mystery with all these different agencies involved, it sounded like.
I had in the first book, I had a whole chapter, about this long chapter too,
Mhm.
written about the agency, the formation,
Right, right.
actually people that, and I cut it out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a whole chapter about the agency, the formation, people actually that developed this new technology to find these people, and it wasn't really necessary for the story. I thought, well, I'm just going to call it the agency, and later on, I may post something about how the agency was formed
I see.
and the people involved with that. Uh, but it was kind of a separate side story, and I thought it was kind of too big to
Mm,
include, because then
okay.
it'd distract the reader.
Right.
But yeah, this agency has got powers over the FBI, the CIA, and
Okay.
it was formed after the development of the Department of Homeland Security.
Mhm.
So they have the power over all these other agencies, which are under one roof.
Okay. Okay.
So
Cool. That's and I just wanted to. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but we're getting some great questions in. Thank you for tuning
sure.
into the live stream here, folks,
Yeah,
and thank
thanks
you for.
everyone.
Yeah, no, this is really cool, and thanks for people who are watching the recording of this too. But Molly jumped in with a question here, and Molly asks this: Are your characters based on people you know? Is Brad based on you? It doesn't sound like that exactly, but
No,
let me know about that. Are characters based on people you know? What do we got?
I think all authors use people they know for characters. So
Hmm.
loosely based on nobody.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that you called your brother Brian in the book, and I just wanted to thank you for that right off the
Yeah.
bat. That was very kind of you. So thanks for throwing that in for me, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
and
Yeah.
in fact, the guy that the Brad that I originally got the idea from, his brother's name is Brian too. So
Oh, there we go. Cool.
yeah,
Perfect.
so
That'll work.
it's not all you.
I take credit wherever I can, man. But let the characters based on people you know. Just getting back to the question, talk about
It's
that.
not really. It's loosely based on everybody I've ever known, and I
Hmm.
think all authors do that. And we sometimes it's fun to invent new characters, or I like to use characters that are kind of already people recognize them immediately.
Yeah.
Like the Skip character in Downtown. People recognize that character. I don't have to say too much about him.
Yep. Yep.
And other characters too, even the handler, Chris,
Chris is great. Yep.
and other
Hmm.
characters that I think people recognize those characters. I don't have to write too much about them.
Hmm.
I like to get back to the plot and the story.
Yep, yep,
And
and we definitely covered that. And we're getting the questions coming in fast and furious here. Mike, thanks for sending another one here. Mike asks this: As a first-time author, how confident were you of your idea slash plot that compelled you to finish the book without any initial feedback from a publisher? Wow, Mike's getting into it here. What do you think,
yeah,
Russ? Yeah.
that's a good question. I think I didn't have any unrealistic expectations. I don't. I'm kind of semi-retired. I don't need this for income or anything like that. So uh, I wanted to have fun with it. So and when I write, I like to write it, have a little humor in it, and which is sometimes difficult for a mystery or suspense.
True.
But yeah, I didn't have any expectations, so I never reached out to publishers or anything. In my mind, I was going to self-publish, and I knew that going into it.
And
And
so you did.
from the first word to the last, I knew I was going to self-publish. So I didn't have any expectations that were unrealistic.
I would
I
agree
hope
with
that
you.
answers the question.
No, I think it does. It really does. And we'll get to a couple more of those questions. But can you go into that? You just brought this up, and I really thought this was a mystery that has a lot of heart to it. I don't want to get into too much of the details with the relationship with Chris, but that's a really good one between Brad and Chris that I hope people dive into. But also just the humor behind this. I really had to kind of work out the sarcasm muscles in my throat quite a bit for this one because it's just such a good book and it's so laden with humor like that. Talk about that, sort of putting in those elements of humor into a mystery like that. You don't always see that in mysteries, but I thought this had a really good dose of that in the book, Russ.
Yeah, I think thanks. And I think I just I wanted to make it a book about just someone that you might know this person. He might be your next door neighbor, and all the characters in the book are realistic. I tried to make them realistic, and with any dose of realism, you must have humor. You know, if you don't have humor, you're not.
Going to be a pretty long time. Yeah,
Yeah.
writing that
So,
thing. Yeah.
and in mysteries, in mystery suspenses, you rarely see the humor, but I think it's just a natural for me because I don't. You know what they say? They always say you bring more tension to the story,
Okay.
and when every time I bring a lot of tension to the story, I tend to want to go with humor because that's just the way I feel. I get tense myself, so
Sure.
when I'm writing a tense scene, I want to put some humor in there.
Hmm.
And so I thought, I'm just going to do it and see how it works out and see what the reader thinks. And I think it's come off pretty well.
Oh,
You
I
know,
think
it's
there's been some great reviews on it for sure. Have you felt that it came off well? I thought the second one
yeah,
did
I
beautifully.
think so. And I always get, some people always say, well, you need more suspense, more tension, and I think, well, I get to those points and I don't want to drag it out. Because it's not that type of book. It's
Right.
I think you go into this book, it's more of a light mystery beach
Mhm.
type read.
Yeah.
And if you go into it with that, I think you'll enjoy it.
Just in time for a little sunshine here in Western Washington, which
Yeah.
I also wanted to bring up with you because we're not exactly neighbors, but we're both Western Washington residents here. I'm up in Seattle. I know you're a little further south, and I wanted to talk to you about that because I feel like the Pacific Northwest almost plays a little bit of a character in both of these books here. It's definitely a part of the country that you love, and I really think that comes across in your work. Was that I felt that was intentional, Russ, the way you
Well,
went
it's
about it.
interesting
Yeah.
because when I was looking for an audiobook producer,
Ah,
I absolutely, I don't know if people know how the process works. We'll get
and
into
we
that
can
a
get
little
into
bit
that.
later.
Sure. Yeah.
But I was looking for someone that had a Northwestern accent. So
Ah,
absolutely. And so, yeah, I think the idea, the old saying is write what you know.
this is true.
And, I know the Northwest pretty well. So, I thought, it might be fun to have some cities. I put Kelso in there, and
Yes.
if people read the first book, they understand where that name came from.
Right, right.
Uh, and I hate to do any
I
spoilers.
know, right. There's so much you could spoil here. That's true.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
so I've got Kelso in there, and then the Kodiak was just a natural progression from my original thought.
Mhm.
And the fact is, in Alaska, our accents are really similar. So,
Yeah. Mhm.
uh, so yeah. And when I was looking for an audiobook producer, it was one of
Mhm.
my first things to check. I said, okay, I need someone from Pacific Northwest. I think
I
it's actually
see.
Washington State. It goes by
Yeah, yeah.
state.
Yeah.
And so, in
Well,
your
that was
voice,
me. Thank you.
I probably listened to 40.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the listeners may not realize this, but you and I have never talked face to face.
It's true. And this isn't exactly face to face, but it'll have to do for
Kind of,
now.
but we've
But
never
no,
zoomed or anything.
no, we haven't. And it is great to meet you in this
Yeah,
way. And
nice to
it's a
meet you
little
too.
strange to do it over StreamYard for sure. But this is the modern technology that we're loving and wrestling with sometimes. I know, but this was a really interesting connection for me too, Russ. And I very much appreciate being named as the narrator for the series because, like you say, there's a lot of different people who compete for these books and audition for these books, and for me, it was really cool to kind of find a book that was in my own backyard. So I appreciate having the opportunity.
Oh,
Yeah.
I listened to, like I said, at least probably 50
Oh, wow.
audiobook narrators before choosing you. And
Wow.
I mean, one guy sounded like Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi. He's like, my name is Brad Kelso.
Oh,
And I'm
almost
thinking,
like
oh
their
my
blood.
gosh.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Not a vampire book, just to be clear.
No, no, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And I told my wife, I think at the time, I said, I think I need to add a vampire in here and have this.
Yeah. 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 Mike is flying questions at us fast and furious here, and I guess
Thanks, Mike.
yeah, he's all over it. Thank you, Mike, for this. And Molly, you got another one that I'm going to answer as well. Mike asked if you had writer's block and how you overcame it. And then with Brad Kelso, did any actors pop into your head when you thought about someone playing him? I guess.
Well, as far as writer's block, I never get it.
Wow, what? Come
I
on.
never ever get writer's block, and I don't know why. It's just I can, for some reason, I can always think of something.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
funny thing is, I mean, most authors probably aren't like this, but I can take and write for a few minutes at a time.
Hmm.
I don't need to set aside like 4 hour block or something like that. I can't do it. I just don't have the time.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. And
So,
then that
yeah,
idea.
I'll get an idea and I'll hop up onto my computer and write for a while. And it could be a half hour, it could be an hour, it could be 5 minutes. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
And then that whole idea about an actor to play Brad Kelso. Is there anything in mind you had there?
Oh, I don't like to say that because I started writing the screenplay for these.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I started to write a screenplay. So
Cool.
I do have an actor possibly in mind, but I don't want to say.
Okay. All right. Well, Mike, it might not be you. Thank you for the
It's
question, but
not
it might
Mike.
not be. Okay. All right.
Mike,
Good
not
point.
you.
Sorry, buddy.
No.
But I did want to answer a few more questions here because a bunch of them have been pouring in. Again, please throw us some questions here on the
Yeah.
live stream, folks, or please throw us some questions on the recording here. I would. Oh, Ken is saying Tom Cruise for Brad Kelso. We'll see what we can do on that, Ken. Thank
He's
you
the
for
right
sharing.
age.
Yeah, right.
Tom
It's
Cruise is
just
the right
about
age.
right. Right. Yeah, I know. Tom knows it too. But that'd be great. But Molly was asking. I think this is a question to me. Molly said a couple things here. She said that your style was very easy to follow along with here. No, that was Ken who said your writing style keeps me engaged, suspense and humor. Thank you for writing that, Ken. Also,
Thanks, Ken.
yeah, Molly was writing to me which characters were easiest to voice over. Um, Gosh, that's a great question. I think, well, Brad was just kind of right in my wheelhouse. It was just maybe I add a little bit of sarcasm to him or something along those lines, but he was about right. I tell you what, I'll do this, folks. I will play a little bit of an excerpt of the first chapter. How about the end of the first chapter here, Russ, where this is a point where Brad is just about to get his orders to go on another mission here. And this is right after he thought he was done with his missions, possibly forever with the agency here. So he's on a plane right now and he's talking on that phone on the airplane that all the special people get to listen to. So let's listen to this real quick. Here we go in a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boots on the ground is what they like to call us older PFTs. But when I found out about my latest assignment, my boots were situated above a thin layer of aluminum alloy at an elevation of 35,000 feet. Is this Brad Kelso? A man from the agency with the call sign Cobra 14 asked me. Yes? I peeked through the privacy curtain the flight attendant had closed after she handed me the receiver. Nobody seemed interested in why I was at the front of the plane using the airline's communications network. You need to get back to Alaska, he said. We've just spoken to CH-163, and she's agreed to the contract. We have another job for you, and it's urgent. I shook my head. For the agency, everything was urgent. My handler, Chris, also known as CH-163, must have had a good reason to say yes to a new contract, because I was tired, ready to get home, and at that point, I didn't expect to be working for the agency ever again. She knew that too. What job? I asked Cobra 14. You'll be briefed tomorrow morning in Eagle River, he said. CH-163 has already scheduled your return flight to Anchorage. She'll give you all the details after you land in Portland. Tomorrow morning? That's right, Kelso. Time is of the essence. Click. Crap. Love the end of that first chapter there. And Molly, thank you for the question about what's going on with all the different voices here. I guess I would say in listening to this, Brad was kind of a natural fit for me, and maybe I gave it a little bit of a higher lilt on some of those different notes. But I remember just kind of trading notes with you, Russ, on this with some of these different characters. And I always ask folks for like a 3-word description of how do you want this voice to sound. So for this first guy that was talking to Brad on the phone, it was like, all right, gruff, short, that like it was something along those. So it's like, okay, I can do that. And so it wasn't exactly my Charles Bronson tough guy.
You hit it out of the park
Well,
with
that's so kind of you to say. Thank you.
all of the, especially all the male voices. I mean, I'll catch myself laughing out loud listening to you.
I had fun with that Texas bad guy. I tell you what, he was that was great. There was a lot of in there.
Originally, I knew that about 80% of the book is either narration or Brad Kelso.
Right.
So your voice, and I told you originally, I said, I want your voice for Brad. Because that, and of course, that's going to be easiest for you.
Yeah, I would hope. Right.
And I think I felt after I could tell during the first book that you kind of got the whole thing pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Right. Just the kind of humor of this guy. He's right in my wheelhouse. I really like this guy's attitude a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a good question though, because well, originally when I first sent you the for Whitefish, I sent you the sketches for I think, and I didn't realize this beforehand, but I think it's about 40 voices.
Yeah. No, I keep them. I should have taken a photo of it. So I record these things, and everybody kind of knows what a timeline looks like, right? I'm recording these on on the program that I use to record audio. So I basically have a file that has 40 different timelines on it of all these different voices, and I go back and refer to them as I'm going through the book. I'm like, okay, how did that guy in
Yeah.
chapter 3 sound that I need to have again in chapter 6? Okay, I got this. So I'll listen to again. I'll listen to myself again, which sounds a little weird, but I listen to myself again, kind of figure out, oh yeah, I had this kind of lilt to it or what have you, and work through it in that way. So
If someone asked me, I'd say, well, there's probably 15 or 17 voices or something like that. And then as soon as I did the sketch, I thought, no, because
whoopsie doodle.
all of these people that even I don't even have a sketch for them. They just say something like, "Are you, can I take your order?"
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's what it is. But it's the people who are he's checking in at the hotel or he's going to the restaurant, all these different, you got to have a voice for all those different people. So,
It's
and it's
unbelievable.
amazing to me how those voices will come back later in the book as well. So that
And
was
this,
super
I
fun.
I spared you a little bit on this because I think there was 20 some, but
Oh, but there were fewer, that's for sure.
there were fewer.
But all the hits were there, and
Yeah, yeah.
this was really fun. Oh, Kelly writes in, she doesn't think that Tom Cruise should be the Brad Kelso character. That's all right, Kelly. We'll have auditions when we have
Who does
auditions
she
on that.
think?
I don't know. Kelly, get back to us on that. So tell us who you need in that main role of Brad as Russ works on the screenplay of this thing. And thank you, folks, again for sending in these questions. They are great to see. If you have questions even after the live stream here, put them in the chat here, and we will try to answer them. I want to make sure that if I can, I'm going to try to get some free audiobooks to the different people who are joining in the conversation here. So I'll be sending along some codes to you. Ooh, Kelly is saying Chris Pine. That's an interesting choice. Might be a little on the young side. What do you think, Russ? I mean, we'll have to
Yeah,
see.
he's a little younger, but you could you could rewrite it
Okay,
a
he's all
little
over
bit.
it.
It's funny, my everyone, the authors need to pick a target market because
Yes,
you can't span the whole age bracket.
right, right, right.
So my target market is over 35,
Yeah.
basically,
Mm-hmm.
and and so my younger audiences, I think, can enjoy the book, but it's just not the same because you're not getting all the humor. I think.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to get to a little bit more of the humor that people aren't getting at the end of this session here when we talk about what's coming up for you next, because I thought that was a great humorous piece to what's going on there. But I did want to talk a little bit, if I could, about some family history with you here, if I could, Russ, because I
Sure.
think this is so
Family
cool, and this, well, it's Family History Hour, and if I could, I'm going to try to put up some of the great history that I wasn't aware of until you let me know about this, but I'll throw the picture on the screen right now. That is a picture of Randy Myers, your brother, who was one of the bad boys in 1990 for the Reds when they won the World Series. And this was awesome. If you remember, folks, if you're from the area here of Seattle, you might recall that Norm Charlton was in this group, who was later the sheriff, as they called him when he was here with Seattle towards the end of his career. But how cool is this, Russ? I mean, you've got a brother who won a World Series, a lefty. He was a dominant closer in his era. I just wanted to ask you about that, about having a brother like that. Is he as nasty as they say, or what's going on with your brother there?
Yeah, it was great growing up together. We both played baseball, so yeah, Randy was one of the nasty boys of the 1990 Cincinnati Reds. Norm
Yeah,
Charlton, as you
yeah.
said, Rob Dibble,
Rob
Randy.
Dibble, I never cared for. Seemed a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
redheaded, but yeah,
But
that's great.
yeah, and they won the World Series, and I was there for the first two games in Cincinnati, which was awesome.
How cool! Wow.
Yeah, so it's been fantastic, and I told you that ahead of time because every once in a while I get a question about my brother when I'm doing
Yep,
interviews,
yep. True
and
story.
so I thought, well, if someone wants to ask a question about that, they can too.
If you do want to ask about that, folks, let's make sure you ask. And it looks like we've got, well, a couple more questions from Mike. Mike, we will get back to this in just a little bit here because I wanted to keep going down the family history path here if I could. And the photo that I really wanted to show, Russ, was this photo of you and your teammates. I stole this brazenly off of Facebook here, but there you are in Italy playing American baseball and celebrating a championship there. Explain what's going on here. This is 1991. What's happening with this photo here? This is 1991, not 1891, folks. They did have color photos back then, but this is black and white. What's going on here? Your Italian baseball career, Russ. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I was in Italy for 6 years playing baseball, from 1987 to 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, 1991, is when we won the championship. And of course, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. What was it? And I was just American baseball in Italy. I guess forgive me. I didn't know that existed. What does
Yeah.
it? What's going on with that?
So that was for Godo. The team was Godo, and the sponsor was DeAngelis.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
was a club, the club of Godo, in the
Okay.
city of Godo.
Okay.
It's a town. It's about 90 miles south of Venice
Okay.
on the Adriatic. So just for geographic. And yeah, I originally got a old coach of mine from college, Joe Barecki.
Okay.
He went over to Italy the year before, and he was playing player coach for a team in Sicily.
I see. Okay.
And then he contacted me. I had a workout with the St. Louis Cardinals down in Florida.
Oh, no kidding. That's
That
cool.
yeah. So I had an instruction league workout for St. Louis, and then I was coming back for the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Joe. Joe asked me. He said because he got a job with Godo for the following year, which was 1987,
Okay.
to coach, and they wanted him to bring in a shortstop.
Mm.
And so he thought
Which
of
was
me.
little old you. Okay. All
Thought
right.
of me, and he said, they got this offer, and I said, well, I'm going to go down to St. Louis, and if it doesn't work out with St. Louis, I'll come over.
Okay.
So I went down to St. Louis for a day. It didn't really, it went okay, but not well enough. Ozzie Smith was still going to be the shortstop.
So there's that. Yeah.
I had
Little
I couldn't beat out Ozzie Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and so I called up Joe and I said, hey, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
So I flew over to Italy, and the rest is, as they say, history. I spent 6 years over there with the same team, Godo.
Wow.
And in 1991, we won the championship, moved up to Series A.
Yes, right.
For the club
Mm-hmm.
team. And then it was an awesome experience.
Traded in that cup of coffee in the major leagues in the U.S. for a nice bottle of vino in Italy. That sounds all right to me, man. I did want to share some of my family history on this, folks. I kind of flared out playing American Legion ball, Russ, but my favorite photo, I think, of my baseball history, if you want to call it that, this is where I was hanging out with Senor Chorizo at the Milwaukee Brewers game a couple years ago. My brother lives out there. Senor Chorizo, good to see you again, my friend. So I just want to make sure I passed that along.
Well, I knew you were a baseball fan too. I could tell from some of your posts. I thought, well, I didn't know if you knew
all about
Randy and all this stuff. So
no, that's one of my faves. And as Mike pointed this out in the comments here, they swept the A's. What a great series that was over a pretty dominant A's team. So and Ken is throwing in a note here. I can assure you in Little League, you didn't want to bat with Randy throwing, and for certain you wanted Russ at shortstop. That's very kind of you to pass along.
That's
there.
Nice, yeah.
Ken, that's very cool.
And I didn't originally when we were going to have this, I didn't know if someone from Italy might post. Most of them I think are a little hesitant because it's in English.
Yeah, it's difficult to get that translation coming through, but we do have a lot of people jumping on here. Claire, good to see you too. Richard, thank you for jumping in as well. Richard is asking if the SWABL Mariners count on an appearance this year in Vegas to help us win the upper division. Looks like they're calling you into service there, Russ. You got the glove oiled up. What's going on?
Well, I still play.
Okay.
I play it in actually 2 leagues this year. It's that.
And this is hardball. This isn't softball. You're playing.
It's hardball. It's hardball, and I'm an old guy, but I still go out there and try to do my best.
Yeah.
So it's a 30 and over league in Portland, and it's a 35 and over league in Vancouver. But I think we're switching to the 45s because we need to.
Okay.
And so 45 and over. And the Mariners I played with on a couple of occasions down in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So that was that whole.
They call themselves the adult baseball. It's the adult baseball league, right?
Southwest Adult Baseball
League. Okay. Well done. Well, it's always good to have some adults around when you're playing baseball. That's a key part to this too.
And the object of the exercise is to not get hurt. This
is true. Yeah, and hey, man, if you've stuck around that long, that's pretty good.
I've been really lucky with my health.
Good.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. That's good
Yeah,
to hear.
exactly.
I'm glad to hear that. And we've been getting some great comments and questions coming in here. I'm going to try to answer a couple more of them as we roll through here. We'll be going to about the top of the hour here, 1 o'clock Pacific time. So please stay with us, folks. Again, if you can throw a good comment to us on the chat here, I'll make sure to get you a code for this audiobook. It's a great one. Miss the Target. It's book 2 in the Brad Kelso PFT series from Russ Myers, the acclaimed author who's joining me here today. Thank you again for doing this, Russ. But I did
Well,
want to
thank
make
you.
sure I threw in another question from Mike here. Oh, here's a good one. Once your book was finished and being self published, what steps did you take to market it? Modern technology? Did you feel an audiobook was essential to get the book out there? That's a good question, Mike. I have some thoughts about that. What do you think about that, Russ?
It's the hardest part for a self-published author is to
Yeah,
market your book.
yeah,
You have a swath of friends, maybe I think Facebook, I probably have 600 or something like that. And
hmm
that's your swath of friends.
yeah. I bet you
And
it's
then,
603 after this event. But yeah, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah.
hmm
And then, then you have your other friends and, so there's some word of mouth. I did little marketing on Amazon, but it's really hard for a self-published author. And basically it's all word of mouth and people, the people that have left reviews and things, I appreciate that helps.
Yes.
Um, how about you, Brian? What?
No, I was going to say it's a part of it, and I've always thought the audiobook piece of it can be a difficult thing to dive into. Russ and I met over a platform called ACX, which is run by Audible and Amazon. There, the Audiobook Creation Exchange. It's basically a clearinghouse, folks, where you've got authors, self-publishers like Russ on one side, and you've got producers like me on the other. And we connect, and I audition for a book, and Russ says, "Oh, that sounds great," and then we connect and figure out how people get paid, etc. And it's a great deal. I have connected with a lot of great authors here, but I will say that it can be daunting jumping into that. You're absolutely right. But what I have thought with the whole audiobook process, and Mike, maybe this gets to your question here, is that people are looking to access your work in so many different ways. And if you are not there on that platform, meaning, okay, you've got a hardcover book, great. Where's the paperback? You got a paperback, great. Where's the ebook? Got an ebook? Great. Where's the audiobook? I think they're just looking for these different ways to access your work. And if you can provide that to them, then I think you're just kind of covering your bases in the right way. And for me, I know so many people who listen to audiobooks and then they'll read them at the same time because you can actually do that. If you're not familiar with it on Audible, you can actually kind of bookmark and then pick it up, bookmark it on your ebook and then listen to it on the audio version and kind of catch yourself up in that way. So I just think that audiobook part of it, it's just become so popular over the last couple of years. Having yourself on that platform, it just feels like an important part of the whole marketing process. Russ, do you
And
do you feel the same?
I have quite a few blind friends,
Hmm.
and I probably originally did the audiobook for that reason. I thought, well, and plus, there's a lot of people like you say that want to switch and want to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I probably got 10 or 15 friends that they messaged me about that. They wanted the audiobook version. So yeah, I think across platforms, like you mentioned, I think are important just to get the word out there and to get people excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
I
so
think
in the audiobook it's a different experience than reading.
I would agree. I've listened to them. I've narrated them, and I've read them too. I'm a big fan of cracking open a tactile book and doing it like that because I like you. I'm also old, Russ, as it turns out. So that's what I grew up with. But
How do
I
you
just think
choose? How do you choose who to? Because you submitted a 5 minute, I think.
right. Yeah, 5 minute
How do you
audition,
choose who to
basically.
submit to?
I really look for books that interest me. I think I might have said before, just the geography of this book kind of felt like right up my alley because it had that Western Washington tie. I just really liked the voice of that narrator, and I really liked his. And I'm not going to say the right words here. There's definitely some sarcasm in there. I guess it's just a good sense of humor. It was a narrator with a really good sense of humor who knew what he was doing, and the book looked like it had a lot of potential to it in terms of unfolding. And I guess that's the point that you need to know about this thing, folks. When I am auditioning for books, I will see a sample of the book that is maybe a couple of pages long, something along those lines. So I don't know completely what the book is about either when I'm auditioning for it, but I got enough out of that sample, Russ, where I was like, okay, this narrator sounds cool, right up my alley. What he's doing sounds cool, and also it's right in my backyard of Western Washington. I want to do this. So they don't
Well,
always line. They
interesting.
don't always line up like that.
interesting too. The first chapter of Whitefish is completely different than the rest of the chapters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in this book, my editor Russ Womack, who did a great job, he told me, since most of the book is Brad Kelso's narration, you should start out that way. So
Hmm.
the actual kidnapping scene, or whatever you want to call it, is in
Yes.
chapter 3. I put in chapter 3 instead of chapter
Right.
1 this time.
Right. Right.
So I'm kind of curious, and no one's ever mentioned that to me. The readers probably don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I had chapter 1 as the Madison chapter first in this
Oh,
book, and I switched it to chapter 3.
I got it. I
So it's
got it.
kind of an interesting little tidbit for the readers or listeners
That
to know.
is great. And a quick shout out to Wendy. Thank you for tuning in. And she said, totally agree with the book on all platforms perspective. I've worked with Wendy before on her wonderful Adventures of Jason Lex series. Make sure you check it out. Wendy, very cool of you to click in and join us here and throw that comment our way.
Thanks,
And I
Wendy.
guess in looking at that chapter 1, I did not actually include that first minute of the chapter. I included the last minute of the chapter because that first minute kind of talks a little bit about your childhood. And it's not completely an origin story, but it talks about, okay, when we played hide and seek as a kid, I was the seeker and things like. I thought that was a really touching and very a great way to humanize your narrator and your main character there.
Yeah, I think it works better that way because you understand the main character first before you go into because people that would read that, which is chapter 3 now,
Yeah,
first, they would think it's more of a suspense, more of a. I tried to add a couple things of humor in there,
right,
but they would think it was different than the rest of the book.
right, right, right,
So
right. Yeah. It's so interesting you say that because you've seen it too. There are so many books out there, and I've narrated a few of them as well, where they have that kind of like shocking, crazy thing that happens off the top that might not even be related to the main plot. And then let's get into the characters. So I think it's a different way to do it, but I really found it refreshing because it was a way to kind of get into this character, know what this character is about, and then figure out where the mystery unfolds. So it
thanks.
sounds like you went through a little bit of a process then to think about this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think every author goes through that same thing because the first chapter, the first page, the first paragraph, the first sentence is so important
Yeah.
in a book because it really sets a tone. So yeah, that first little story about when he was a kid and his brother and him, I thought set a tone for him.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it
Mm-hmm.
did.
Yeah, no. I thought it was great, and I thought it really played through in terms of sort of Brad looking back on his life and thinking about where he was now and things of that nature. That was a cool way to do it. That was a really interesting way to get us some more information on this character. And thank you very much for these different questions that are coming in, folks. We're getting them fast and furious here. So. Yeah, Mike points out shocking as a hook teaser for visual media. That's a very good point. Sometimes it works for books, but I really like the way you approached this one here. And I did want to start thinking about what's happening next for you here, Russ, as we get closer to the top of the hour. And again, folks, we'll be with you until about 1 o'clock Pacific here. We really want to make sure we answer some questions. People who are asking these questions on the live stream here, I'll work to get you a free audiobook code here. We really appreciate your involvement with this. But I did want to talk about what's going on next. And I got to ask this question. This trilogy is going to be awesome. But there was a book I read a couple years ago. I don't know if you've ever read it. John Grisham, Playing for Pizza. All these guys like playing American
I have
football.
read that.
Yeah, playing American football over in Italy. And I'm
Yeah,
like, how about baseball for Bolognese? Like maybe you could throw that one out there. What do you think? I'm kind of workshopping the title, but
yeah.
Italian baseball, man. What do you think?
Well, yeah, Playing for Pizza. Yeah, I read that, and I think was it Grisham? Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he was talking about like some guy that went over to Bologna and played American football.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, people have asked me about that. People have asked me if I would write. I don't know if I want to though, because you're in.
Well, talk about writing what you know. I mean, you've grown up with baseball.
Yeah, I could write it, but it's so realistic and using
Mm.
so many people.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like the idea of using people's names and
Right.
having.
You'd have to make up a lot of different names on that
I
one
had
for
such a
sure.
great time over there, and
Yeah.
I've got a lot of friends over there,
Sure.
and
You want to keep your friends over there. Okay.
so I don't know if I want to write that as a what do they call that,
Side.
autobiography or something.
Yeah. A novelette.
It would be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
could write it as a Brad Kelso and Chris go on vacation.
Right, right. Yeah, why not? Well, there's other characters in the back of your head. I know there are. And oh, we had a question coming in from Claire. Claire, thank you for tuning in and throwing this question our way. What motivated you to be self-published? That is definitely a big step. Some thoughts about that, Russ? What motivated you to be self-published? Claire, thanks very much for the question.
Yeah, it was just so easy.
Yeah. Was it
Amazon makes
really?
it
Okay.
easy.
Hmm.
Amazon makes it easy, and even
Oh,
ACX with the audiobooks,
yeah.
it makes it really easy. And so I've heard a lot of horror stories, and if you're not famous or you're not, you know, I think I'm a good writer, but I may not be the best writer.
Hmm.
And so if you don't have a lot of ins in the industry, I don't think you're going to get looked at too much.
Yeah.
So I thought, why even try?
Mm,
And because it's so easy to self-publish. I'm not doing it for the money.
yeah.
And in fact, I donate all my proceeds. I never really like to tell that, but I donate all my proceeds. So uh, I just thought, I'm just going to self-publish and make it really easy on myself, so
Cool.
I can concentrate on the writing.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. When you think about that business side of it with the publishing, you're absolutely right. That can be a major league headache. And so doing it the self-publish way, not that it's a piece of cake to self-publish. I mean, there is some work to that, but I hear what you're saying about the different hurdles you might have to jump through. And Claire, thank you very much for the question.
And
But
I'm not against it, and I
oh,
thought,
okay,
well, for a screenplay, it's a whole different thing. For a
sure.
screenplay, you need to go out and search for that producer,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I don't mind doing that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
for the book, if my last name was Kardashian, I could write some piece of whatever, and it would sell a
Uh-huh.
million copies.
Yeah, Kim
Uh,
Kardashian, if you are tuning in,
yeah,
no offense
no offense.
intended at all on that one. But you never know, Russ.
But
It could
Brian
very well.
will do the audiobook.
That's right, right. I'm all over that. Yeah, Kim and I, we can work together. Yeah, we got the booth right here. We're good to go. But I did want to talk about what's coming up next in this trilogy, In Plain Sight, and that's Plane, of course.
Yeah,
Russ always great at playing with words here, but I wanted to talk about this book. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I don't want you to give too much away, but what happens in this next book? Because clearly you're working on it right now.
I am working on it. It's the third book in the series, and
Hmm.
basically the last book in the series. And uh, I've done. I when I write, I like to do. Basically, I come up with an idea, and then I do a chapter or two, and then I start making the outline afterward, which is a little bit different than some people.
Hmm.
But so if the first couple chapters work, then I can come up with the outline and I can rearrange and everything like that. And so I'm in that phase right now where I've written a couple chapters and I'm just coming up with the outline now. I have it in my head kind of, but I haven't written it all down.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at in that book. It's and I told everybody it'll be ready September of 25,
Okay. Okay.
which,
That's right around the
yeah, it's a
corner,
little
man.
ways off, but I'm working on another book now too. So uh, I'm excited. I'm excited to get to it, though. Like I said, I've written a chapter. I sent you a part of the first chapter.
Yeah, would you mind if I gave people a little taste of that? Would that be
No, go
okay?
ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, I wanted to talk to you about this. So I found a little excerpt that I thought might be great for people to listen to. So this is Brad, who's on a quest for Ellis Brown, an international scam artist trying to hide himself in Alaska. And here's what I got. This is Brad talking off the top. But finding people who didn't want to be found was my specialty, and it only took me a couple of days to locate Brown. I had a bit of luck because he had been staying at the Avalon Hotel in downtown Kodiak using the name Gordon Lightfoot. Big mistake. The funny thing was, Brown had no idea a man named Gordon Lightfoot was a popular singer-songwriter who had countless hit songs in the late 60s and 70s, including Talking in Your Sleep, If You Could Read My Mind, and The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I suppose Brown was too young to know, or maybe had been too stupid to look the name up on the internet before he started using it. I later found out that he thought he had invented the name to appear more Native American. In the morning, on the second day, as I was on the island, I was drinking a mocha when I overheard a barista at the coffee stop near Kodiak's harbor talk about someone named Gordon Lightfoot staying at the Avalon. I was a big fan, so I went over to the hotel that morning to check it out. I came here to see Gordon Lightfoot, I told the Avalon's receptionist. She was young, maybe 18 or 19, and she didn't appear to know who the singer-songwriter was either. Mr. Lightfoot isn't here right now? she said. But he should be back this afternoon. Would you like to leave him a message? Do you know if he's performing somewhere on the island? Performing? Yes. Does he have a concert planned? Mr. Lightfoot? Yeah. He's an older gentleman, right? Like around 75? Oh, no, she chuckled. He's closer to 25. Oh. I was a little disappointed because I had hoped that Gordon Lightfoot staying at the Avalon had been the Gordon Lightfoot, and that maybe he had planned to do a show in town. And then, just as I was leaving, the receptionist called out to me, Sir, I think I just saw Mr. Lightfoot go into the laundry room. Call it curiosity, but I decided to see what this younger Gordon Lightfoot looked like. When I entered the small laundry room, the room was a cramped space for 2 men and 2 washers and dryers. I immediately recognized a 24-year-old man. Probably even better than I would have recognized the real Gordon Lightfoot. It was Ellis Brown, the man that I had been assigned to find. Okay, I was very lucky. Ta-da! There's a little bit of that chapter there, and
Fantastic.
I loved it, and just the riff on Gordon Lightfoot. People don't know who he is. You were saying you were workshopping this too, and nobody
Yeah.
knows who this guy is. Unfortunately, he passed away last year in Canada, of course, but a legendary singer-songwriter.
Yeah, I asked my Facebook friends. I came up to him with a question. Ask whoever you know that's between 28 and 34 if they know who Gordon Lightfoot is. That was my question I asked everybody, and I didn't tell them why yet.
Yeah.
And I got, I don't know, probably 30 people coming back to me saying, and they, most of them, probably 80% of them, the 28 to 34-year-olds didn't know who Gordon Lightfoot was.
Isn't that crazy? Oh,
So
man.
yeah, so I knew, because I'd written that, and I knew I needed to check and make sure, because if they all knew who he was, then it wouldn't work with the story. And I'm not sure if it works anyway. I think it works, but
I do. Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's great. It's just kind of playing off the fact that, well, I think it's playing off the fact that you're old once again. Right? That's all right. Again, write what you know, right? That's what
Well, and generationally, I don't think people really understand the difference. There's a huge difference when you're writing. Just everything you put in there, everything you put in a book, an author puts in a book, there's a target. You have a target audience, and either you're writing for the target audience or not. And so everything I write is for people that are over 35. So
yeah.
That's
I don't know. I think there's a few other people outside that age range that might enjoy it too. But
I think so too. I think, and I just love watching you do your voices, because I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I know. It must look a little weird, but there's a little bit extra to it. And we've gotten some nice comments. Molly, thank you for the applause. Claire, thanks for the woohoo. Mike says, hilarious. I'll take it. Kelly says, great stuff. Heather says, that's fun. Saw Gordon Lightfoot in concert many years ago. That's very cool. Heather's on the team. I like it.
Hey, I'm a Gordon Lightfoot fan.
Oh, huge. I thought you were going to put Sundown in that list of
it could have been.
Yeah.
But the power of 3.
Yeah. That's what we had room for. I get it. 3's a magic number. But Russ, I got to say, it is at the top of the hour here. I told people we'd stick around till about 1 o'clock. And I got to thank everybody again for sending in all these great comments and all these great questions over the live stream here. If you're watching the recording, throw us a few comments here too, because we'd love to answer them. Thank you for bearing with us through some of the technical difficulties off the top of this. But I think we wrapped up with a really, really great program here. And I so appreciate it, Russ, you joining me here. Any final thoughts out there for our viewers and listeners and readers out there?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, you can, on ACX, on Amazon, you can go get the audiobook. Brian does a fantastic job narrating, and both of them, Whitefish and Miss the Target.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed listening to you. And like I said, I laugh out loud when I'm some of those voices are crazy. They're fun.
I know. Claire said that teenage girl sounds just like you. Thanks a lot, Claire. That's probably truer than I know. But Russ Myers, thank you so much for joining me once again. Thanks to everybody who joined in on the live stream. Thanks to everybody who is watching the recorded version of this. We really appreciate it. I will be working to get some free audiobook codes to people who are asking some great questions here. We really appreciate that. And thanks once again for joining us on Inside the Audio Booth. I think there might be one more person. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice work, fellas, says Ken. And thank you, Ken, for joining in as well.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone,
we'll see you
for
next
listening.
time, everybody, on Inside the Audio Booth.